Left-wingers of Reddit, what would you say your most right-leaning opinion is? That scrutinizing every $600 transaction that enters or exits my bank account is serious government overreach. Edit. I'm appreciative for the folks that explained that the scrutiny is not over every transaction over $600, but for every account that does over $600 in transactions total. Question. Does that make it any better? Seriously, why can't they scrutinize the trillions in offshore accounts that they know about? Edit. Rip my inbox. I support the idea that you needed to vote, but with the caveat that the government needs to automatically issue a free federal ID card to all citizens. Social security numbers make for an awful national registry system and we need something better. I don't think you should need to register to vote. It should already be done. Edit. Voting days should also be a federal holiday, and ideally use a blockchain ledger. That's my position. I agree with voter ID, but I think voting in general should be as convenient and accessible as possible. Forgiving student loans does nothing to address the actual issue of astronomically high college tuition prices. It's kind of a half-baked idea, but I want to see student loan interest forgiveness, combined with a cap on public university tuition increases tied to the rate of inflation. That local ordinances and taxes should favor small businesses rather than hinder them. I had every approval for a business license, but the property had a tax lien from the previous tenant and we couldn't get a license. The previous tenant was a local city hall. The city wouldn't give it to us because they literally owed themselves money. Every year we operated we would get a city inspection. Explain the reason we didn't have a business license. Watch them hang their head in shame and tell us to go about our way. Many regulations were put there by the large corporations to stop the small guy from getting into their game. Some of our language policing is insufferable and obnoxious. ETA. I went to bed and when I woke up this exploded. Thanks for the awards. However, I feel like I need to clarify. I am not a TERF. Frick TERFs. I love and respect trans people. By insufferable, I am referring to words that don't need to be corrected, like unmanned, cockpit, homeless or chief executive. Nobody was making a fuss over these words, and striking them from our vocabulary seems like an empty gesture. It's the black box on the Instagram of gestures, self-serving and pointless. Like how Latinx isn't actually culturally sensitive to Latinos. I like guns, and own a few. I still think folks should need a background check though. Honestly, this reminds me of the meme that's like if you go far enough left you get your guns back. Damn. I thought this was a hockey. I'm gonna go post it. I was about to say, I played left wing most of my life but I'm not against the right wing if coach wants to put me in. I'm tired of the American trend over the last 15 years of putting everyone in either a left or right box. Boxes in which everyone has the same viewpoint on several totally different issues. I do think that borders need to be in a state of control and that immigration largely needs to be kept through legal channels. Ideally, there are very few countries in the world that don't have some type of controlled border. We should focus on fixing our own broke chute before dumping money into fixing other people's broke chute. 1 year of taking the entire military budget and spending it domestically would do that. That Latinx is stupid. Latino is general neutral when referring to more than one person or referring to an unnamed person. Just like Chico is boy, Chica is girl, and Chicos and be kid, s, or guy can be a male in English, or a group of people can be referred to as guys. Real Mexicans' reaction to Latinx. Freaking gringos. Forgiving student loans without first reforming education is a very bad idea because it will signal to lenders, academic institutions and students that the government is handing out free money. Only 2 of those 3 are going to win long term. People often talk about how student loans are expensive because they're impossible to get away from. Because they are, and that's a huge reason why. Political correctness is not a real political issue. Total government control over markets is a bad idea. Yep. Cancel culture will make our society too fragile and end up hurting liberal politics in the long run. Most of the calls for canceling politicians or public figures are purely performative. I would much rather call the person out on their shoot and give them a chance at changing their ways. I don't like the idea of throwing someone away in prison for a long time for a one-time mistake that isn't unforgivable. So why should I want to take away their shot at ordinary social life or career? It's also been shown to not resolve anything. When the mob gets it wrong they never apologize. Gentrification gets thrown around mostly as an excuse not to help urban areas. Lots of efforts to clean up litter, build better infrastructure, and get people to move into cities with vacant lots are shouted down as gentrification, when ultimately it helps to have a bigger tax base in your community. If you want to protect existing residents, then rent control is the way, not getting mad that a new apartment was built on the lot that's been derelict for 30 years. I remember in my college town there was an area that was notorious for higher levels of violent crime, property destruction, and generally just in a state of disarray. The college began purchasing some of the property to expand student housing, and apartment companies began investing in vacant lots to build future housing. I hate when people start to lose an argument and bring up their race or sexuality when it has nothing to do with the conversation. Or the convo has nothing to do with race and they'll call you racist BC you disagree with them. This doesn't seem controversial, but it is extremely controversial on left-wing Twitter, lol. As someone who is very left-wing Twitter is the most cancerous cesspit in existence. Excessive government control causes problems in a functioning society. That said, excess is subjective. I still believe in America. It just needs some work. That identity politics is killing our ability to focus on substantive changes to real problems in society like wage stagnation, global warming, strained infrastructure, poor school funding, etc. I'm not talking about ignoring privilege or keeping existing racist systems intact, but when it's literally the only thing many people want to talk about, or when progressives cannibalize their own for using the wrong term, or make everything a purity test of knowing the right authors and phrases, etc., we just shoot ourselves in the foot. I'm okay with the death penalty under certain circumstances. In theory, if an offender has no path to rehabilitation and can never expect to be a part of society again, it seems like a reasonable outcome. In practice, there is no one on the face of the planet that I would trust to make that determination. This thread is a pretty good example that most of this screaming from the left and right is coming from the extremes and the most exaggerated talking points are being screamed about. It's unfortunate that it's being blasted into the middle where it seems like more of the reasonable, common sensible people are. Like, you can have your cake and eat it too, but nobody believes it because everyone's being told everything can only be black or white, red or blue. The USA is truly divided. Edit. This gained a lot of traction. I really didn't expect that. I don't talk about politics much. I just want to say thank you for the awards and the civil discourse. I don't know. I am conservative, and had a meeting with a client the other day. She is a Democrat. We agree on almost everything, especially that none of our candidates represent our beliefs. I think we will get it right someday. I freaking loathe Hillary Clinton. Same. She single-handedly caused herself to lose the election. Her deplorables comment was the exact rallying cry Republicans needed to want to vote for Trump, to vote against the snobby Washington elite. Incredibly stupid thing to say, despite how true you may feel it was. Love knowing I can own a gun or guns. Don't own a gun, but I could. In my opinion, it's okay to own a gun and never use it. You must know how to use it. Have used it in practice, licensing per your local laws. Lower my freaking taxes. What gets me is I'm paying all of these taxes, and for what? We don't have universal healthcare. Education costs are through the roof. At this point there are too many illegal firearms in the USA to ever stop private, law-abiding citizens from owning them, or else it would just be criminals armed with an unfair advantage. I saw a compromise proposed when talking about universal basic income. The idea was that everyone would have to serve the country for 4 years to be eligible. Not necessarily in the military. It could be civilian service like at a hospital or school. Maybe working on infrastructure. But until you served you'd be ineligible to collect. That way citizens would earn their UB and build patriotism at the same time. Sounded like a fair compromise to me. Look into conscription in Switzerland to see how a basic rundown of this works. Well-regulated capitalism is by far the best economic system. Our problem is our government has been captured by the super rich. Our regulation was so lax for so long that the government is now regulated by the capitalists, instead of the other way around, like it is supposed to be. As far as bumper sticker slogans go, we should focus on the fiscal health of the USA over other random countries.